on that jam-packed show today. Lots of stuff going on. Fauci was uh, testifying at Congress. We'll have, hopefully, we'll have Eddie George here at the top of the hour. Stephanie will join us a little bit later. And then at the bottom of the hour, we'll bring in Jon Coupal, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We haven't talked to him in a long time. But you know what? Somebody's going to have to pay for these $54 billion deficits statewide. And you know who that person is? Go look in the mirror. Because there always comes a day of reckoning. Nothing's free. And all this stuff. We'll be hooking up here and joining Facebook Live, and then see if we get Eddie George from Hemet Eye News up on there, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. Always fade it down there when the drum roll comes in. I know you're just waiting for that to go, and then like on the cue like that every time. I don't know. Yeah, it goes to show most people are creatures of habit. They do the same thing all the time, every time the same way, yada yada yada. And then there's squirrels like me that just go all over the place. Totally unpredictable. Got a big show lined up today. I guess one day we're going to come in here and there's going to be a slow news day, and we're just going to, sit here and whistle or something. But 2020, that has not been the case. We're going to have Eddie George of the Hemet Eye News here, I think, coming up here pretty quick. Stephanie will join us in a bit. And we will have, and we haven't had him on in a long time, Jon Coupal of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association will be joining us after the bottom of the hour. So I know you all want to tune in for that when we join KMET, the Mighty Met 1490. But we haven't had him on in a while. Our schedules have kind of been in flux on that. And on top of that, he's a very busy guy, along with his whole crew at Hemet Eye News, covering all the stuff with Lori, Alex, John, and the whole crew over there. On top of that, giving you all the latest information, not only in Hemet, like nobody else can, but all over the world. That crazy guy with a lazy eye, Eddie George from Hemet Eye News. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Roy? How you doing, brother?
As I say, I hope that sky's always in the sun and the moon and all that's up there. As long as that's going, we can deal with almost anything else.
Right. Well, if it does fall, I just ordered some sky hooks from Amazon, so we can hook it back up there.
Yeah, because I know you got plenty of duct tape and baling wire in stock, so that we should be okay.
Zip ties, bro. I got plenty.
There you go. That'll keep it all together on that. Anything smoking out in Hemet lately before we get into some of the other stuff that you want to get out there?
Not really. I mean, we've just been having the normal out here. A couple of house fires here and there, and idiots, with lighting these fireworks. That's the main topic right now in Hemet is everybody's getting aggravated with all these fireworks.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up because fireworks, I actually like them. The fireworks do not bother me, but I do get it. I've had, gazillion animals. Some of them are fine with it. Some of them just totally freak out on the whole deal. Same with people on that.
My dog just looks at him and says, "Is that the best you got? Come on now."
Yes.
But other people's dogs are going stupid, running out and getting hit by cars. We got, PTSD, veterans out there. People don't think of other people. They think of themselves. They don't care. I posted a video, what was it, last night, I believe it was. Somebody sent in a video of some people out shooting fireworks and caught them on camera and called the PD. And, of course, PD told them, well, that's not an emergency. But hours later, they sent an officer out there and, they always say, big fines, big tickets, but the officer just came out there and told me, you need to stop this. Oh, we didn't know it was illegal, and that's all that happened. But they need to really crack down on this, because, they don't realize not only does it bother the animals and the pets and the vets and everything, but they don't understand what comes up must come back down and, landing on people's house roofs. We had some land on our roof last night. What if they got embers, and then we got a house fire? It's just people just don't realize, the consequences of these fireworks. Leave it to the professionals,
And we're going to cover it a little bit later on when Stephanie joins us here in a minute. But we pulled up a little bit just for a little preview. It's coming on. We pulled up some of the stuff that was going on in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and St. Paul, the two biggest cities, in 2019 before anybody heard of this stuff. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But this is kind of my take when you say that and the officer pulls up. Increasingly in police departments, sheriff's departments all across the country, they've had a declining amount of officers versus the population. Less officers per capita, however you want to say it. And this has been going on for really decades, probably a couple of decades now. So back in the day when they had enough police officers to take care of stuff like this, ever increasingly, they have not had the funding or ability to do that. And plus, we put them under all kinds of constraints. And, we're talking about that now. Don't do this. Don't do that. Can't do this. You're all a bunch of racists. You're out there with with your knees on our necks and the whole thing. So in a lot of this stuff, I want to get your take on it. Are we doing this stuff to ourselves? Are we paralyzing society so much where we can't do anything?
I believe it is, Roy. I mean, it goes back again, common sense. And, people want to complain about everything, and, they want, let's defund the police. Okay. You defund the police are now limited on what they can do, and then you complain about the police not showing up, the police not going to be able to come do a report on something. It's like, for instance, going back to the fireworks, a lot of people are calling the police, hey, we got fireworks people, the police basically, I tell people all the time, if you keep calling the police about the fireworks, nothing's really going to be able to be done, so we're basically need to have a group of officers just to cover fireworks, but they can't handle all these calls, like I told somebody last night, calling the police, blowing up their phones about the fireworks. I mean, and then you want to complain about, well, they don't show up, they don't care. Well, they're limited on what they can do. They're limited on how many officers they got. And then you want to defund the police, so that's even cutting even more down and going to take a longer, response time.
Yes,
it's crazy.
A lot of the things on that, and I even, and back in Moreno Valley in the days of that, and I think it was 15-17 budget, I put together a budget, and I actually showed them how you could actually cut officers on the job, deputies on the job, but increase their hours of actually time of productivity. And that was put in community service officers too, which are non-sworn officers. You could have non-sworn officers doing investigations, going out looking at fireworks and getting that and taking pictures and doing that. And then, hey, call the cop. You need to arrest this as a guy, yada, yada, yada. But you get a community service officer for about 40% of what you would get a sheriff's deputy. Put that in real numbers. A sheriff's deputy costs a city, county, or whatever that's doing it about $320,000 a year per sheriff. So that's all his salary, all the support equipment, everything that goes out there to do that. A CSO2 will cost you about $130,000 a year. So, and they can save as much as 1,000 hours off a sworn deputy's time, transporting prisoners, doing accident investigations, a lot of things like going out investigating fireworks, during the season like this. There's a lot of ways we could reform or streamline or make our police departments, sheriff's departments much more efficient, but we don't seem to want to have the will, or politicians don't want to have the will, as one mayor told me, who was going to go for that budget of doing that, where we actually cut the police department budget on that, but we put more officer hours on the ground, boots on the ground doing that. And he says, we got it right to the deal. And then he says, I'm not going to do that because Riverside Sheriff's Association will recall me. I mean, This is what we're sitting with in the situation. This is what a lot of people don't see or hear if you're not, a crazy like me that's really up on involved and in the inside of a lot of this stuff. And this is why I'm explaining this to the people is, all these things that you do or say or something about this, or you just go along or you don't research it, well, then other people are going to use that to their advantage, not to your advantage. So it behooves you to pay attention to this stuff and actually ask questions and actually come to a point where you demand of your governments, hey, let's do this stuff more efficiently so we don't have to deal with these problems.
That's right. And another thing that's really got a lot of the people in the community is this zero bail that's going out. You know, we get these carjackers and these hard criminals, you know, they go out, they steal cars, they break in homes, they rob places at gunpoint, they get their citation, and they're released. They don't even go to jail because why? They don't want the COVID to spread. Well, you know, the way I feel, if you don't go out there and break into people's homes and steal people's cars, you ought to go ahead and go to jail and get the COVID. You know, we don't want you out on our streets, you know, stealing our stuff. And these people, I've been on several scenes with the PD, you know, Riverside County and Hemet PD, and these guys, you know, they get released right then and there from a crime, and then it's like the next day they're arresting them all over again for the same incident. You know, it's like throw their ass in jail, let them do their crime. You know, they did their crime, let them do their time. And give them a little bit of COVID, you know, for the benefit of the fact of their stupidity. You know, that's you do stupid stuff, well, then you get stupid rewards, you know?
I couldn't have said that one better myself. Yeah, that's if you don't, and this is you want a preview of defunding the police departments, sheriff's departments, or law enforcement in general. This is expect more of this stuff. You think it's bad now? Wait till you call on the phone and the deputy doesn't even come out because there is not one.
Exactly. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You know, answer the phone 911. What's your emergency? You know, or so we're sorry, we can't take a call right now. We'll have to transfer to you somebody that can answer you within 5 days because we're defunded. You know?
Yeah. Call your neighbor or whatever, like that one guy said, or your family.
Call your crack whore.
Yeah. They go. Call the homeless encampment, see if they'll come out and help you. They might.
Right.
I mean, this is the kind of madness we're talking about. You know, that's happening in our country at this day. Not only in our area, the Inland Empire, but it's spreading across the whole world on this thing. Quick take, and we only got a couple minutes left, but everybody's all into Twitter. Oh, coronavirus or cases are opening up. Where they opened up, and Newsom was crying crocodile tears, got us back on mask. Stupidly, in my opinion, of that. Don't panic. We're going to have Dr. Kelly Victory on tomorrow of that. The coronavirus cases are spreading among young people, which they expected. They are asymptomatic, which means they're suffering basically little or no symptoms. They're actually building the herd immunity, and it's probably going to be a good thing this is actually going on. It's nothing to panic about, but our officials still keep using this as a hammer to keep us under control. Got about 2 minutes left. I'll let you wrap it all up, Eddie.
Well, what I got to say, this coronavirus, folks, y'all just, basically use common sense. Don't worry. Don't panic. This will be all over in a few months once the election's over. Then all of a sudden it's going to be like the Newcastle disease. They were out killing everybody's chickens and their poultry and everything. Oh, we got this Newcastle disease. Now all of a sudden, what happened? The Newcastle no longer exists. Now they're letting you buy your birds now. You can restock your birds. Yeah, it's the same day. It's all political, folks. That's all I got to say. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
And I tend to agree with you on that. They're using this to control us on this whole enchilada on this. And it's, I just ever increasingly I'm not getting a whole bunch of warm and fuzzies on this whole deal that's going across. And, I wish more people would focus in on this because, man, it's killing us on that. Give us that great commercial plug for Hemet Eye News on that you always end the show with.
Always, it, folks. Hey, make sure you do follow us on YouTube, Hemet Eye News on YouTube. We're also Hemet Eye News, like the eyeball, Hemet, EYEnews.com on Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, you can still go to a platform on any browser and just type in HemetEyeNews.com. It'll take you straight to our Facebook platform without even have to have Facebook. You still see our news. And make sure you share us to all your other friends. Tell them where to go for all your local news. This is that weird, ugly, crazy guy with the lazy eye, and I'm getting off my chair. And Roy, I am now off your air.
We'll do it again next week, Eddie.
All right, you have a good one, Roy.
You got it. That's a great Eddie George from Hemet Eye News. Him and Lori, Alex, and John and all the crew over there do an absolutely fabulous job covering not only Hemet, but everything going on over there. As I said, we're going to come up with a segment with Stephanie on that. You're going to be surprised. Maybe, maybe not. But we dug out an article from 2019 of what was going on in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and St. Paul specifically. The two biggest cities in Minnesota, as regards to what was happening in the police departments, public safety, and the general all-around crew and everything that was going on that. And it's very interesting to see what was going on and what they were dealing with prior to all the madness that broke out a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago over the George Floyd situation. But I think it's very important because you're going to see maybe the rhetoric and the bill of goods you're being sold is not the case of what you're seeing or what you're hearing or what was actually on the ground prior to this. Now, you got to ask your question, why? Why are they doing that to control it, to control you, or that? Because if they're running a false narrative, there's a reason behind it, and it's very important to find out what that reason is. So here we go. One very distressing thing that's going on right now is this whole thing, and it just came out in an article on City Watch. And this is reason I picked it, and I picked it up, and this article is very pertinent, I think, to what's going on in our times, because it was written in January 30th of 2019. Nobody had heard about coronavirus or COVID-19 or lockdowns or riotings or Chaz or Minneapolis or defunding police departments. None of this was being discussed at the time. But this is about the two biggest cities in Minnesota, Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's by Peter Cox, and again, the title of it is Why No One Wants to Be a Cop Anymore. And again, this is Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. Way before all this, any of us knew what we would be dealing with in 2020. Goes on to write, this noble profession, as cops like to call it, is not for everyone. It asks that you bear witness to humanity at its worst and doing the carnage and cruelty to incumbent in no other job. So like I said, and this is what one cop told me one time, is we spend 90% of our time babysitting 10% of the population.
Right.
So 90% of the population, we don't even, maybe if, we might stop them for doing 50 and a 40. It would be like the 90%, that's the most contact or that they ever have with a police officer. You did a California stop at the stop sign.
Right.
Going on further to quote in the article, for Anthony Hines, that came clear on a cold Minneapolis night when his squad car was first to respond to an accident. Someone blew a red light, rammed into another car, then fled into the dark. Left behind were two small children dead in their car seats. For Dan Hatton, it was the day his training officer went to J.C. Penney en route to shoplifting call. Suspect Philip Cole decided to murder was unacceptable price to pay for eluding and misdemeanor in a theft pinch. He pulled a gun and shot Officer Mike Hogan point blank in the head. If there was some serious reflection on how difficult this job was and whether it was worth it, Hatton said. So, we're going to go through more of this article, but I just want to get your reaction a little bit to that on what's going on of that.
You want my reaction?
Yes.
Well, I mean, this was back in 2013, but I think that there's always 19. Excuse me. I think there's always been like those stories that would break kind of like this. No?
During the stop, the man reached into his car for a gun. The officer subdued him before he could fire. Afterwards, Letterman considered how something as simple as a uniform nearby led to his murder. I just thought to myself, this guy had no idea who I am, but he either wanted to shoot us or or wanted to shoot us to shoot him, which is a very important thing. There's a deal out there called, suicide by cop.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want it, you don't have guts enough to take the 357 or 9mm or 45 and point at your head and pull the trigger, but you point a gun at a cop,
Right.
and they shoot you. You don't have to pull the trigger, but you're dead, but you didn't have the guts enough to do it.
Right.
So these are all the things that are going on in a police officer's mind.
Yeah.
Because deputy sheriff, when they're out on the job, these are what the guys on the beat, the guy that responds to your call if somebody breaks into your house or something, going across the deal.
See, I would never think an officer's job is ever easy or just going to be traffic stops or speeding tickets. Officer's job's terrifying.
Yes, they have to, and they're under, they never know when
Exactly.
something's coming on. When something's coming on, this whole thing.
But I think I'm basing that off the world today. I mean, 10 years ago it would have been different, but then you still had 9/11. I mean, how long ago was that? That affected the entire world, but you had fire, police, and ambulance there. I mean, there's going to be those scenarios that you're just going to have to get through.
Nash recalls the day two friends were slain. Officer Ron Ryan was checking on a man asleep in the parking lot in Dayton's Bluffs Church. Guy Harvey Baker was wanted in Iowa for violating probation. So he gunned Ryan down. Despite having the day off, Officer Tim Jones joined the hunt. 3 hours later, Baker was hiding in a fishing shack, and Jones approached with a canine. Both the cop and the dog were shot and killed. That's the end of our innocence, Nash said. It took us. We knew we weren't invincible anymore. So, again, you're going through all this, stuff that they're going through. This is what's going through their mind. But this is what's more, so you know what the police officers are dealing with. This is what they're dealing with. Were and are and were. Prior to this, what all you're hearing here lately is the cops in Minneapolis are racist. They were looking to gun down anyone that looked black or dark-skinned. They were out hunting them, the whole rhetoric on this.
Right.
So back to the article. Here lies the rub. There are nearly 10,000 cops in Minnesota. Only the tiniest fraction involving cases of high-profile violence. And if police can be accused of profiling, so can their critics, who tend to paint all 10,000 with one-size-fits-all malice. Few occupations make for more convenient punching bag, nor has the body politic done them any favors. Over the past 20 years, Minneapolis' population has grown by 60,000, yet there are 30 fewer officers to serve them, Crow says. Throw in an expanded workforce arriving from the suburbs and the nightlife scene, brimming like never before, and police are stretched as thin as they've ever been, leaving scant time for personal interaction between cop community that leads both before they play on the same team. So this is what they're doing. You're not hearing any of this. Have you heard anything like this been talked about in the past month over this whole thing?
No, none of that stuff. That you only get that kind of stuff when you know a police officer and they tell you about their day.
Well,
or a
you
partner's
go back
day.
and research what
Yeah.
was actually going on. What is the real story on that?
But news never covers any of that.
When I was younger, you always saw Officer in the Neighborhood. Anthony Einstead, a Minnesota chapter president of the Black Police Officers Association, former Minneapolis cop who's now captain of Metro Transit. That closest to the community has been dissolved over the years. Meanwhile, mental crisis calls in places like Bloomington have doubled. Yet cops are teachers. They're left to deal with the wreckage of broken families, poverty, addiction. They're expected to bring cures that the rest of the society cannot. Can you imagine never losing your temper or never making a mistake? Laramie says it's almost everything in your day is recorded. So there you go. They've got to deal with the cops are the ones that got to deal with these situations as they are. If the crack addict is out there, making a scene, ripping people off, throwing rocks and things, or making people's lives miserable, across the board are stealing to get the fix, to get his drugs on, busting into your house, busting into your car, or whatever's going on. And this is what they have to deal with. And you're seeing the results of the video we played yesterday of the violence in Seattle, the 4 kids that got shot, one of them 3 years old in Chicago.
Horrible.
In Minneapolis, people are getting gunned down. One dead in this so-called autonomous zone or whatever, with their own police force or something of that. This is what's incredulous about this whole situation. This is what they're dealing with. In reality, Senior Commander John Lozia, the job is 10% warrior mentality, 90% making it safer. That's what's led female officers in the East Metro to recruit in traditionally unexpected places. We're out in the beauty salons, we're out in the playgrounds and gyms, and said Vice President of the State's, says Kirkland, Vice President of the State's Black Police Officers Association. Yet, if women remain a tough sell, people of color even more so. After a recent retirement, Sergeant Valerie Naiman, St. Paul, doesn't have a single black on the force. So remember the story I told you about Joel Andreveris, the former police chief from Moreno Valley? He was a recruiter out here before he became police chief, and he said it's hard to get Latino and especially blacks because it's seen as, it's not seen as a noble profession. It actually is seen as you're joining their side, and you get ostracized in your community for joining that community. And that's what's going on. That, further quoting Larimore, especially people of color, they're just really reluctant to make that jump, he says. I've had black students feel as if they're almost going against their race. They'll get called out. How can you go against your race? That's the theme that's going on in that community. And what you say, the black police officers, or there's more white police officers, or whatever. That's a major reason why. Not only in Minneapolis, but in Riverside County, across this nation. You will be ostracized in your neighborhood if you want to become a cop. That's what's wrong with that. That's what needs to be fixed. You need to fix your community. We're going to bring someone, we're going to play it later, from the 60s to now, of violent crime. 50% of the violent crime is committed by blacks, yes, they're only 13% of the population. It's probably that way in 1960, and we'll bring you some stats on later on how this goes. In effect today, hasn't changed, 50, 60 years of that? And it's even worse than that. Because of that 50% and 13%, most all of that 50% of violent crime that's committed by blacks in the United States, it's committed by the 6% male population.
Right.
So they're almost 10 times more likely to call that. So you want to talk about profiling, if you want to do that, or the statistics, the cops, the detectives, law enforcement agencies, and everyone else are looking at when they're seeing this, what do you think they're going to think? The bottom line, and Mason Weaver talked about it yesterday, when are the white people going to step up? Well, if they see violent crime, are they going to be more likely if I'm walking down the street, or some guy with the dreadlocks and baggy pants and all that, black guys walking down the street with the boom, boom, boom and the music, who are they going to likely suspect if they hear a break-in's coming?
I put my money on you, but the cops want it. No, I'm just
Exactly.
kidding. No, I get what you're saying with the profiling, though. It's hard not to. You can tell a crackhead a mile away,
Yes.
But then we're bad if we say, hey, she's probably done drugs or on drugs.
Yes.
Not us personally, but just in general.
But yeah, we're not taking care of all these situations, and we're not dealing honestly with the situation. We're not talking honestly about where the crime is committed, where it's happening, and how to solve it. It solves in our communities. It's solved by building them up. not tearing them down, not burning them, or burning somebody else's community, or occupying them, or anything else. That is not going to work. That is going to be a surefire way to further to destroy your community completely.
I agree 100%.
And that's why, we have to. Again, we have to deal with this honestly. We have to stand up.
I think there's with everything, there's an approach of doing it, though. I think that, there's a calm way to go about everything. I think that people are just losing their calm voice and their patience.
30 seconds.
I understand that, but when they do, we have to we have to stomp that out. And we have to take care of it, else we will never get to...
No, I agree, yeah.
We will never get to an end solution as long as we're fighting about it.
I agree.
Here we go, 10 seconds.
Apps. Go to KMET1490am.com and download your free phone app today. IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
Guitar music comes on every Monday through Friday, 5:30 on the Mighty Met 1490 KMET. On that, we had a very good, interesting first half hour as we go on IE Newswire Daily on Facebook and YouTube. Had Eddie George of Hemet Eye News on there. Stephanie joined me for a segment, and you really probably should watch both of them. We dealt with some of, a lot of you concerned in the local area. I see it all the time about the fireworks and all that, but then. We dug out a article from 2018 in Minnesota, specifically dealing with Minneapolis and St. Paul, the two biggest cities in Minnesota. And it's very interesting to see what was going on as far as police departments and the vibe of the city and what was going on. And I think it's very important because it might be a stark contrast in a lot of things that's been pointed out, or the rhetoric or narrative that's being put across the board today on all this stuff. So I think I think if we had more conversations like that, or real putting of the facts, we would be in a lot different place in there, and we would actually be talking honestly about everything that's going on of that. But we're going to start this half hour, and we haven't had him on in a long time. But we're going to see if we can get Jon Coupal, president of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, because along with all this other stuff that's going on of that, and, coronavirus and that, somebody's going to have to pay the piper. And you know who that is? Go look in the mirror, because that is you. And for that, and to bring us up to speed maybe on that, and I'm hoping it's going to be good news, but I'm bracing for the worst, because California is facing a $54 billion deficit over this coronavirus stuff across the board. And as aforementioned, I said, the person who ultimately is going to have to pay that is going to be you. There is no business taxes. They are just tax collectors for the government. The end consumer pays all the taxes on whatever goods or services you buy, on top of all the income taxes, gas taxes, and we'll get into that, and all the other fun stuff that's going on in California. We haven't had him on a long time, which has been my fault on that. But Jon Coupal, president of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, welcome to IE Newswire Daily with Roy.
Hey, Roy, how you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well. I don't know if the state of California, I have a little bit more concern to that, or the aforementioned deficit of that, but I think on July 1st, our gas taxes, just the portion in California, is going to go over to 50 cents over all this stuff. But on top of that, am I wrong on this deal, or is California in for a big wave of attempted tax increases coming on to deal with this whole, and I know you probably don't want to comment on the political part of coronavirus, but you are going to have to deal with, through Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, of the assault that's going to come on the taxpayers and citizens of California when we're trying to dig out of this mess.
Yeah, I think our adversaries, our political adversaries, will try to raise taxes because of the pandemic. I think they'd try to raise taxes without the pandemic. I think they would try to raise taxes when the sun comes up in the morning, and I think they'd try to raise taxes when the sun goes down at night. I mean, this is their MO. I mean, there's nothing really, Roy. There's nothing really unusual about this. They will use any excuse. They will never waste a crisis. And by the way, that $54 billion surplus that our governor identified, the legislative analyst says that's not it. That was the deficit as measured against what we were planning to spend, which included a significant spending over last year. Well, that was obviously an inflated figure. I forgot what the LAO said. I think the LAO said something like somewhere in the 30s in terms of the actual deficit, which because we had a rainy day fund, thank you taxpayers. All the politicians are breaking their arms trying to pat themselves in the back saying, look, we had this surplus. Well, you can thank the taxpayers for that. That's what that was their blood, sweat, and tears, not yours. Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting is the interplay with the HEROES Act, the $3 trillion that Nancy Pelosi wants. That is being driven in large part by the states because not just California, but other states as well, have these very deep shortfalls in their pension obligations. And the red states are getting pretty angry about that, saying, why should we spend trillions of dollars of federal money to bail out states like New York, Illinois, and California that we're handing out goodies to the public sector unions hand over fist, and we would have to pay for their fiscal irresponsibility. And that's a very good argument. Now, so what's going to happen? I don't know yet. There is some talk that even some Republicans say, yeah, some of the states are in trouble and they're going to have budget shortfalls. But you'll notice something what's really interesting. I just saw a graphic earlier today that the red states are coming out of the pandemic economic weakness faster than the blue states. And again, red states, again, Jarvis, we're not a partisan organization, but the reality is the Republicans, not always, but usually tend to be more fiscally responsible than the Democrats. Again, that's not always true, but I think it may be states like Texas that help, and Florida that help really drive the recovery, whereas California may be more of a drag on the economic recovery. But all that having been said, there's this kabuki dance going on in Washington over the HEROES Act, and I think our point about that is if you're going to give some bailout to state and local governments, it better come with some significant strings attached, including making sure that the states adopt pension reforms in a way that they can't renege on it later. It has to be permanent, has to be structural. Take care of that problem before we bail you out. Then I think we would say, okay, all right, we're not going to pitch a hissy fit if there's some support there for state and local government. So that's kind of my view of the current situation with the pandemic. I think, I am not going to opine on the efficacy of the masks. I happen to wear one. I question whether they're effective. But here's why I do it. I don't do it because government tells me to do it. I do it because it makes other people comfortable. If it makes other people comfortable, I have no problem wearing a mask. I think it's the right thing to do. It's what we do to treat other people the right way. But I don't do it because government tells me I have to, because quite frankly, government is wrong more than half the time.
There you go, and that's my whole reason for not wearing them is because and we've had many experts on that to debate that particular topic back and forth. But I want to get into some more of the specifics of some of the things, and you're probably more familiar with them, or correct me if I'm wrong on some of the stuff that I'm hearing. Just one of the smaller one, and I just want to touch it out on this. out of the cap and trade fund, Gavin Newsom was trying to take $130 million out of that because he said it was interest on that, and that wasn't part of to fix the roads and all this stuff of that. And I heard the legislature, even the 2/3 plus majority Democratic legislature, put the kibosh on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about the cap and trade funds. One of the good things about that, however, is the fact that even the Dems are bailing out of the high-speed rail project, and that was funded predominantly by the cap and trade fund. So if they're going to free up those funds to fund a project, by the way, the cap and trade was supposed to go to projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. During the construction phase of the high-speed rail project, they probably put millions of metric tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere for a project that will never be built. That is California in a nutshell. Spending money on a project that's counterproductive to the objective that you've stated. That is California in a nutshell. But having said that, yeah, there's going to be. I mean, look, when it comes to excess revenue, it's like if you throw a steak in the middle of a pack of Dobermans, you better not be in the middle of it. That's the way government, that's the way the unions and everybody else look at when they look at taxpayer revenue. Oh, we got $100 million of free money. The reality, cap and trade has been horrifically damaging to the California economy. It's one of the things that drives the cost of living, and for all the mouthing of the platitudes for the working class, the Democrats really have inflicted a lot of damage on working Californians through these extraordinarily high cost of living measurements, and obviously a lot of that's the cost of gasoline. So there's where we are. I think there are people who are relatively comfortable. They might be able to tolerate it, but a lot of working class are going to simply move out of state, as we know.
And to mention the cap and trade fund, and this is separate from the tens of billion dollars bonds we passed for the high-speed rail, Newsom's still fighting for $2.4 billion out of the cap and trade fund today to go to building that, train from Bakersfield to Merced. One of the highest usage areas where we could use any sort of public transportation, much less a bullet train. And he's still trying to fund that train, basically, as everybody says, to nowhere and throw more money down that. It's got to be used for a specific purpose, but you could use that, I think, for building roads or stuff, or making every Californian's lives a little more tolerable on the whole deal, and in fact, actually fixing our roads. But no, he's still entrenched on building that throwing money down that rat hole of a train to nowhere.
Yeah, the bond proceeds from that Proposition 1A was the original, more than 10 years ago, the original high-speed rail proposal. That has to be dedicated to high-speed rail. But the cap and trade revenue does not, and the stated statutory purposes for which that money can be spent are so broad they could legally spend it on anything. They're supposed to spend it on projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We've always said that the best way you could reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to build more lane capacity, because when cars are stuck in traffic, they're sitting there and they're doing nothing but polluting. They're not even moving, and they're polluting. So if you were able to address some of the congestion through more lane miles, and then throw the mass trend, the light rail advocates some money, I guess that's okay. It's not. I don't think it's very effective money, but give them some. But certainly, there are things you could do to improve transportation in California that would have a real positive impact, not a fake impact on greenhouse gas emissions.
And I've said that, and I've said it, the worst pollution, and most of it is coming from idling cars, and that's where they pollute the worst. And in some instances, a car doing 60 miles an hour, the air is dirtier going in the intake of the engine that's coming out of the exhaust. It's actually cleaning the air as it's going through at 60 mile an hour, because that's where the car is made to be most efficient. at doing this. But you go on our roads of that, and they're clogged. To this is scan the COVID deal where everybody's staying at home, but that's starting to come back now as people are doing whatever, and getting back to the way things were. But yeah, that $2.4 billion could be used for anything, and they still are insisting that they're going to throw it down that rat hole of a bullet train.
Yeah. It's indecipherable. Again, it's reflective of California government being so dysfunctional, and it's reflective of the 2/3 supermajority with in one party. One party rule in California, whether it's altering the election procedures, whether it's spending money, whether it's restricting business behavior like AB 5. They just, the majority party is inflicting serious economic damage to the state of California, and so many people are unaware of it. It's tragic. It's very tragic.
You got it. Got about a minute left. I'll let you wrap it up and tell everybody why they should be joining Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
Sure, Roy. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me on. It's always a pleasure. The time goes by very quickly. Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is California's largest tax advocacy group. We have over 200,000 members. Go to our website at hjta.org. And as our strength is in our numbers. Our dues are very reasonable, $15, but our strength is in the number of people we represent. So when you join us and you fill out those petitions that we send out to you and return them, and we dump them on the legislators, they know about us. They know who we are. So really, joining HJTA is one of the best things you can do as an activist to protect your rights as a taxpayer and a homeowner.
And we'll have to have these visits a little more often now, because between now and November, we know we're going to be under a big assault on that. Thanks for being on the show, John.
You bet, Roy. Take care. Bye-bye.
You got it. That's Jon Coupal, president of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, giving us kind of an update on what we're going to expect across the board on this. Because, man, with all the news coming in, it's going to get ugly on this whole deal. Carla wrote in and asked, well, I wonder what we're going to are you going to talk about the whole deal with NASCAR and Bubba Wallace and whole thing? And yes, we were. We're going to save that for this segment coming up on that. Short story on this. They were in Talladega, Alabama, the Talladega Superspeedway. They actually the longest, I think, 2.62 miles, longest around oval that NASCAR races on, highest bank track. It's a little bit bigger and a little bit more banked than Daytona. It's a little bit more famous Big Brother on that. Talladega was built in the late 60s, right after, about 10 years after Daytona. But they were they were racing there this weekend, and the big story before the race was Bubba Wallace, which happens to have a darker shade of brown tone than most of his skin tone on that. And if those of you not familiar with NASCAR, they have garage areas of where the 40 cars are parked in, and that's where they work on the cars, store the cars in the weekend and stuff, and do all their inspections, called the garage area and stuff. And there's assignments of that. So along about Friday or so, it came on the news report. Oh, there was a noose in the garage assigned to Bubba Wallace, driver, the famous 43 Richard Petty Motorsports. And they had the big to-do on the whole thing, and everybody's walking up supporting Bubba Wallace and all the whole thing. And, oh, isn't this terrible? And going back and forth all across the board. And we're going to investigate and get all the authorities in on that. So this is a report on CNN, like I say, not part of the vast right-wing conspiracy, because today the FBI and NASCAR, the FBI released a report and NASCAR had a comment on it. So here we go. This is a CNN report on Bubba Wallace and the whole noose incident in Talladega. Stop at that. Oh,
agents to
there we go.
Interview people to look at video. And what they believe they found is that the noose that was identified in Bubba Wallace's garage has been there for some time. I'll read you part of the statement. It says, the noose found in garage number 4, this is Bubba Wallace's garage, was in that garage as early as October 2019. Nobody could have known that Mr. Wallace would be assigned to garage number 4 last week. We also have a statement from NASCAR that says, in part, the FBI report concludes and photographic evidence confirms that the garage pull rope fashioned like a noose had been positioned there since early last fall. The FBI says that as a result of looking at some of that evidence, including some of the earlier video, it indicates that what looks like a noose, it appears to have been a garage pull that was in that location well before anyone knew that Bubba Wallace's team was going to be assigned that place in the Talladega Speedway. Wolf.
You know, it's interesting because I'm looking at the NASCAR statement. At the end of the statement, it says, "We appreciate the FBI's quick and thorough investigation and are thankful to learn that this was not an intentional racist act against Bubba." And it adds, "We remain steadfast in our commitment to providing a welcoming and inclusive environment for all who love racing."
So there you go. There was no hate crime. Whatever the rope or however it got in there was at least, according to the report release, was in there in October 2019. There is, and this was what was flaky about this whole story in my mind, or let's say raised questions. No fans at all, or very few, maybe 500 or so, but nobody was allowed in the garage area except the NASCAR team members, crews, employees of NASCAR or the track. It's not like a typical race weekend where there's hundreds of thousands of fans, or you can go through the garage areas and they have tours and all that, and there's a lot of activity in that. The NASCAR has a very controlled environment of the garage area anyway, and this is like hyper controlled under this. I mean, that's what made this story questionable. But look at what the narrative went on all weekend. Oh, Bubba Wallace was a target of a hate crime. How could we have this? I think LeBron James was commenting on it, and they're having the big pre-race ceremonies. Oh, we all support Bubba, da-da-da-da. You know, this should never happen. Well, it never. The narrative you were saying did not happen. That's the problem of jumping to the gun, jumping to conclusions, holding Judge, jury, and court right there in the middle of the square. No facts, no nothing. We just jump to the conclusion, yeah, some racist out there is doing that, threatening all black people and Bubba Wallace that they're going to hang him and all this sorts of stuff, and we can't have that. Well, it wasn't happening anyway. And it shows in there that there is not even no credible evidence, no evidence that shows anything of the sort, which the whole thing was built up with on the weekend. But why I point this out, and this is a video from a few days ago in the Chaz, Chop, whatever area that was going on. This is the area of, scroll me back down to the small screen on that, of that. Yeah, this is the black-only, racially segregated area. And you have a bunch of, looks like probably college student age white kids, if you want to call it that, all around. And they're supposed to be the guards, and that we're supposed to be playing role reversal, all that, are supposed to be apologizing. And no white people are allowed in this area. Now, you want to talk about, to me, they're trying to do this. You want to talk again. This is how they use incidents like the Bubba Wallace, which was never that way. You heard about how Minneapolis, as we ran that, what the police department was in 2019 and the overall vibe and everything that's been going on. Is that anything like what you're hearing today? So go ahead and run this short video, and this is the black-only segregated area in Chaz. Go ahead and roll the video. So it says you're seeing the sign.
How long's the blackout going for?
Till 8 p.m.
Okay, so I have to wait till 8, basically?
You're welcome to hang out in the perimeter area.
Well, the thing is, I'm half Italian, half Colombian, so do I get a pass to get in there, or?
Well, this space is right now held for just black folks.
Oh, just black, okay,
Yeah.
so full black, you're saying?
If you have black ancestry, or if you have experienced oppression because you are black, then you can enter this space.
Okay. Thank you.
So there you go. Now, to talk about segregation, or you want that of where we're going to do that? Is that how you really think we're gonna be in this all in one, or we're gonna fix this stuff by separating that and doing all this stuff? Like the guy said, well, I'm Italian Colombian. Well, how do you what is it that you determine, or how do you determine all this stuff? Because in an honest world of that, how do you prove one way or another that you are X, Y, and Z? It's mind-boggling, but this is the narrative that they want to create. They created on these false narratives. Oh, you oppressed this segment over here. You have to pay. Well, where's your evidence anywhere that this person oppressed this person? You don't have it. Nobody living today knows anybody that was under the Enslavement Act, and that's been so far down the road. How do you even deal with that? It's like the whole deal, and that's why I wanted to run it around with the Bubba Wallace thing after we got the report today of that. There was no hate crime. Nobody put a noose in there threatening anybody, Bubba Wallace or anybody else. But you heard all weekend, it was all over every dominant media report. Everybody's apologizing. We support Bubba Wallace of this, and that should never happen. Well, it never did. Where's the apology from all the ones that said that? Maybe we should have waited until we found out the facts of the situation before we jumped to conclusions and made all this. This is how it hijacks a society. This is how they control you. As Mason Weaver and we had on yesterday, that is how they keep you on the plantation. They are the poverty pimps to keep you down and control you and make you try to do something you would otherwise never do. They're experts at it. We've went through this. We just put the Minnesota deal on to show you how it works. Are you hearing what was actually printed? That's a good thing about history. And some of the stuff that's out there, because was it in 2019 and before like they're saying it today? We'll be back tomorrow on Wicked Wednesday with Stephanie on that and bring you all the news that we have all the time on that. And until tomorrow, see ya!